Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I am Peggy West, the organizer and today's moderator, and I want to welcome everybody to another class on building envelope diagnosis. This one is diagnosis and repair, uncontrolled water penetration by Karins Engineering. And I am so happy to have the entire team on today from Karins, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of, I know your busy schedule, because I know it's a couple of hours. Before we get started, let's just touch base on some housekeeping. For those of you who have not been on any of our webinars before, please put your questions into the Q&A box, which is being recorded. Q&A, I'm sorry, the chat box is not recorded. So if you put questions there and they don't get to them, they may not be able to catch them, or I won't catch them to answer them. So Q&A is the way to go for questions. This is a CEU credited course, and all you managers out there, please allow about 10 to 14 days between Karen's Engineering posting them and the DBPR grabbing them and putting them onto your accounts. So make sure you check in about 2 weeks and give us some time to post those credits. With that said, I would like to do a quick introduction of our sponsors who have invited you today and people to consider for projects, upcoming projects. I know sometimes you have to take 2 or 3 bids now. And with that, I'm going to start with Daniel Baum. Daniel, would you introduce yourself? He's the CEO and founder of COA Solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us on the webinar today. My name is Daniel Baum. I specialize in insurance programs for condominiums and homeowners associations. And today's topic of building envelope diagnosis and uncontrolled water penetration definitely has a direct connection to insurance. Water intrusion can lead to significant property damage, mold, unit owner disputes, claims, and certainly difficult questions about whether the cause is a covered cause in your policy, if it's excluded from your policy, or if it's considered deferred maintenance. So insurance is there for sudden and accidental losses, but it's not a substitute for proper inspections or maintenance or timely repairs. And the documentation created by qualified engineers and contractors can also be extremely valuable when placing coverage, when we go to negotiate with carriers, and with respondents to claims. So if any of you are, as we go through the webinar today, have any questions about your policies or aren't sure about things that are covered and want me to take a look, I'd be more than happy to. I do a free policy review for anyone. There's nothing to sign. I'm happy to give you my opinion and give you some guidance if you don't feel you have it. So thank you very much for coming. I'm very proud to be a sponsor of today's webinar and supporting this education that helps you guys as boards and property managers, both with your buildings and with my insurance programs. Thank you very much for joining. Have a wonderful day and a very nice weekend to all.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Okay, I just want to mention one of the co-founders of this particular series, the Construction Summit, is Rudy Martin. He's not here today. He's out on vacation, traveling out of the country. So he is the president of GM Painting. So I will provide a sponsor sheet to everyone, and it will have everybody's contact information on there, including Rudy's. Next, I want to introduce Nicole Johnson from Hafer Company. Hafer is a complete full service CPA firm, and she has a commitment this morning with the board presentation. So I just want to mention they have 4 offices around the state. If you need anything to do with your auditing or anything like that, CPA work, please reach out to Nicole from the sponsor sheet. We also have the paving lady, again, out on appointments. Dawn Miller is your contact there for anything to do with paving. We also have Best Roofing. Best Roofing is all over the state. They are now covering everywhere. I think they have a new office in Orlando and also working on one in Tampa, primarily based out of Fort Lauderdale. Then we have Jamie Gelfand. She's the vice president for First Citizens Bank. Right now, she is available for any kind of loans or setting up any sort of credit lines at First Citizens Bank with the hurricane season right here. It's never too late, so be prepared every way, financially especially. We also have Ben Friedman from City Quiet Windows and Doors. He's the president. He would be your contact for anything to do with windows and doors, and certainly for a bid because that is a high ticket item, as you know. We also have Brooke Cavender from Southwest Elevators. Brooke is one of the partners and owners, very busy. Her and her sister traveling the entire state. They have a new office in Tampa as well, based out of Fort Lauderdale. Southwest Elevators is an installer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Damaris Cabrera, who is on today. Damaris is with Clarkson and Varick, which is an elevator consulting company. So tell us about yourself, Damaris, and what are you guys doing?
Good morning, Peggy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Damaris Cabrera. I'm the Business Development Manager for Clarkson and Varick. We are an independent consultant, nationwide elevator consultant. What that means is 100% we don't touch the equipment. We are an owner's advocate. So our objective and our role is to bring the expertise to all the condo owners and the property managers to understand and handle their elevators. Elevators are an issue everywhere, and most of the time we believe is the most misunderstood asset. So you have a contract that you know you have expectations, but somehow it's not working out, and it's very hard to understand why it's not working out. It should be simple, but it's not as simple. So this is where we come. We look. Either can be a failure of the defect starts on the scope of the contract, and maybe the contractor doesn't know how to communicate that he's doing what he is was contracted for, but that is not fulfilling the needs for the elevator. Preventative maintenance is key, and and to have a program to understand that the entire elevator doesn't age, it doesn't last 25 years. There are some components of the elevator that are going to be 5 years, 10 years, depending on the use, depending on the location, depending on that preventative maintenance. So all this is so important. And this is where we come and we help you to understand what you have, what are the needs of the equipment, and have this conversation with the contractor to make the best out of the contract that you have. Also, we help with the maintenance evaluation because sometimes the elevator contractor takes advantage of this twilight zone, as we call it, and then they don't perform. It's that simple. They take the opportunity, and then the elevator breaks down, they're just going to bill you extra. So we come, we evaluate, and we help to keep this contractor accountable. Of course, modernization, new contracts, when you want to change that contractor, we help and we assist with everything else. So if you have any questions, we are very data driven and we do this as a courtesy. If you have any questions, you have an invoice that you don't understand, just give us a call. We're here to help.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Peggy.
Very good. Okay. I also want to introduce, I always say the wind beneath my wings, a partner that I've partnered up with for many years now, the Vinteum software team. Today we have on, if you'll just wave, Paula, she's the new intern, recent to the team. We also have Fabricio. He is marketing specialist there, helping me always with marketing ideas. And today we also have Hugo Honora on, and he is going to tell us what Vinteum does. So Hugo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Peggy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Hugo. I'm the head of customer success and product at Vinteum. And let me tell you a little bit about what we do and why it matters to you. If you run an HOA or a condo association, you already know the paperwork isn't the hard part. It's the people. Neighbors by Vinteum gives you community one place to manage everything: communication, maintenance requests, voting, amenities. No more juggling 5 different tools, hoping nothing falls through the cracks. Neighbors was built for real communities, not for tech people. If your residents don't check their emails or only show up in the neighborhood for the winter, we thought of them first. That's why we built smart calling, text blasts right into the platform. When a hurricane hits you, your board can reach every single resident with a few clicks, snowbirds included. So that's not a nice to have. That's how you keep people safe when it actually matters. And here's what most software companies won't tell you. The two is only half the job. You're never doing this alone because you don't hand your login and disappear. This is what Vinteum doesn't do. Our team trains your board, trains your residents, and stays with you even after the launch. You don't have to become the IT department for your community. This is our job. Every single day, you're a customer and not just on week one. So if you're ready for software that keeps your board and your residents on the same page, let's talk. I'll drop our info on the chat. And to conclude, we've also launched the free version called Neighbors Lite. So you can try everything without having to commit to anything. Thank you very much, Peggy, for having us, and have a great webinar.
Okay, awesome. Okay, with that, let me reintroduce the name of the course here today is Building Envelope Diagnosis and Repair. It's about uncontrolled water penetration. I have the distinguished team from Karins Engineering on today. Happy that you all could join us again. And I wanted to start with the introduction of Hector Velazquez-Abreu. Hector's been a long time supporter of my webinars. I appreciate that. And if you will introduce your team, I would appreciate it. And good luck with your class.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Today on our class, we have a unique set of team members that will help you. And the way that it's going to work is going to be very interactive because we got our design part of a building, how it was originally designed. So you get that perspective. You're going to get restoration perspective, and you're going to get the MEP part perspective as well. We got Sal Panic on the line, Mike Valentine as our designer, Nick Dunning as well as restoration. So you're going to have a nice team here that's going to help you out on a lot of questions, and we're going to try to make it as interactive as possible, going through all the phases on a building for you guys. Sal, if you want to talk a little bit about yourself and the company. You're muted, Sal.
Yeah. Well, I'm the vice president in charge of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing division. About 4 years ago, Karins Engineering decided that they wanted to provide full services to their clients, which was above and beyond the structural work. It included all the MEP systems. So I'm a professional engineer in about 8 states, primarily worked out of the New York City area, but I've done work throughout, the country on the design of hospitals and industrial and all sorts of type of projects. So again, we brought into focus as far as services that Karins could provide are all-inclusive, which as I said, include all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, sprinkler aspects of any project of any type. So it's good to be brought on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Appreciate it. With us, we also have Mike Valentine, who's our leader on design. Mike, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure, yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Valentine. I manage the design team for the Karins Engineering Sarasota office. We bring structural design, consulting experience, managing projects and teams to help owners and stakeholders build efficient, economical, elegant structures. We provide new and innovative design techniques for a variety of project types, including condominiums and educational, multifamily, commercial, retail, religious, civics, you name it, sports facilities, and even adaptive reuse, especially. Personally, my background includes material science, research, testing, forensic investigation, and basic understanding of buildings and an appreciation of all structures, including new and historic. So glad to be here this morning.
Thank you, Mike. And lastly, but not least, we have Mr. Nick Dunning. Nick, if you want to.
Nick Dunning. I'm the Director of Operations here at Karins. I mainly concentrate on restoration, do a little bit of existing building MEP, and I also am in charge of all the training here. So I started as a restoration intern 20 years ago and have been with the company ever since.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it very much. So we're going to start Peggy, is that okay? We start with the presentation. I think everybody's waiting on it. Gonna share my screen, guys. So here we go. So thank you all for joining us, Building Envelope, Diagnose and Repairs, Uncontrolled Water Penetration. Since we have a nice group today with a designer, MEP, restoration, feel free to be sending out the questions. We will try to make this as interactive as possible. We're all gonna give our 2 cents about each individual area, and we can continue on. So that's why Peggy separated nice 2 hours for question and answer, which we'll try to get through all of them. If we do not, we always receive the questions afterwards, and we try to answer them back to all of you. So we always try to do that as well. The objective of the course, we're going to be providing basic understanding of building envelopes, identifying their potential issues, impact of external forces on building, options and steps to repair any issues that we have. What is the building envelope? It is the enclosing, covering, membrane, or structures. Provides protection by enclosure and balancing environmental forces. The envelope must respond to both natural and human concerns. So what are natural forces? Is going to be rain, wind, sun. In Florida, we get all of them, including our hurricanes, right? In other areas like California and New York that happened a little while back, we got earthquakes. In other areas, you got tornadoes. So you got a range of things that an envelope have to support. And then we got the human concern about safety and security. We all have seen, I guess, and we can assume that everybody have seen the pictures from New York and that building having some issues on some of the columns. So the evolution of building envelopes. Tollers are high-lows, graded exposure when you have high buildings. In Florida, we got not such a high building, except maybe in the Miami area more than anything. Thinner, we got reduced storage capacity, innovative material with compatibility, increased complexity and constructability when you have a taller building, greater reliance on sealants, on interfaces, and then we got higher expectation of comfort. Those are the typical buildings, and when you get your unit, that is what is protecting you. That is what it is involved on your building. Traditional buildings or traditional masonry, like for example here, is what you can expect. Typically, those buildings do not go as high as a skyscraper of 40, 50 feet, 40, 50 story high. They're a lot smaller. Then you got historic bricks. That is a combination that you will have your bricks. You got your wood framing system as well. Older buildings are going to start showing deterioration on these members is what we're going to be talking about due to water penetration or water issues. When you got sealants, if you see the picture to the left, sealant of your windows start to detach or break apart, which typically goes 5-7 years, depending on the sealant you're using. You're going to start getting water into your structure. Water into the structure will damage the bones of the structure, if you're not consider it that way. Or wood framing is very susceptible to that and continue to deteriorate. On a more townhomes condominium that you will see typically on Florida areas, this is what you're gonna see. They are typically their wood frame. They are CMU blocks that are gonna be installed on them. They do move, they do change due to temperature or wind, and you have to keep up with maintenance on your building to avoid water intrusion. On mid-rise buildings, 5 to 12-story building, you're going to get some effects of wind harder than a townhome, for example, because they're a little bit taller, but not as much as a taller building with the 12-story ones that is going to be affected a little bit more. And of course, the weight of the building and everything else. All of your structures always have to be maintained and cared for. Protection from internal and external forces. To achieve full protection, the building's penetration must be carefully controlled. And what are my building penetrations? We're talking about my doors. We're talking about my windows. We're going to talk about the sliding glass doors. If you have any vents for the dryer, those kind of things have to be protected. Those penetrations must be carefully controlled and protected. Why? Because we get leaks, we get flashing, must be properly installed in order to redirect the moisture back to the exterior. Like we said before, window leaks and door leaks. Not only those, but you also get the roof leaks because those are part of my penetration when you get your exhaust on some of those mid-rises and on taller buildings as well. When you got your water stacks are also an issue of water intrusion to the units. Here on natural forces in Florida in particular, we got our wind swirls around the building. If you see this in comparison, let me lower this. It's going to be a little bit better. Our buildings are going to withstand, are designed, and Mike can join in now to talk a little bit more about the design of wind pressures on your building. They are designed to withstand, based on codes, the wind loads that are going to be affected by the natural area and or hurricane seasons. They are designed to withstand that kind of load. Building will move, windows will move. They will get some water intrusion. It's not a fishbowl that is not going to move at all. They do move. Mike, if you want to join in a little bit on design on this part.
I don't have too much to add other than, yeah, I mean, especially the part about the corners. The corners of the buildings, both on the roof and on the facade, are very critical. They see probably the highest wind load that we will see on a structure. Those vortices and those eddies that we call them, they provide both not only suction forces and direct wind forces. It's a big deal. We have to consider those, and we see an incredible amount of pressure. And of course, the pressures can suck water, in and out of anything, whether it's block walls or any kind of cladding system that you have around the window as well. So, as much as we hate to admit it, a lot of things don't go together the way we want to, both in new construction and back in the day. So trying to concentrate on these corners and these high susceptible wind zones are very critical. So so when we design things, the buildings, we're always looking at those locations around the building, as well as the main areas, what we call in the field. But it's a big deal, and we try to do our best to keep those leaks, both vapor and water and all that, out of the building. So, yes.
Thank you, Mike. Like Mike was explaining, that vortices that forms around the edge of the buildings are the most critical one. We had a situation on a building once that our client called us during a storm. Hey, we're getting water into a unit. And we went out there. It was up in Daytona, maybe it was raining for 2 straight days or something like that. We go to this unit. Yes, she's getting water intrusion on the side window, not the sliding glass door, not looking at the ocean, but it was on the side window, right where the vortices occurred. So when we look at the window and I put my head out the window, I can feel the wind and all that. And I'm like, oh, this is strange because I don't see the whip holes being obstructed. When I put my hand right between the wind force that was creating around the edge and the whip hole, water started coming out of the whip hole. So the wind force was so strong that was preventing water to drain properly from a window. So those kind of scenarios do occur, which are unique, to put it in a particular wording, but they do occur and have on your building. So those kind of things you have to be concerned about or knowledgeable so you can address it properly. That person in that particular building is going to always have some kind of water intrusion, but she has to be on top of it to protect the building. Like on the slide says, the end zones near the corner of the building where large negative pressures are generated and air accelerates to turn on the corners. Gusts in the wind field generate fluctuation. Internal, like Mike was saying, internal pressure in the building that add to or subtract from the exterior wind pressure of the building. So you're gonna get that force coming in. If you look at it on our little picture here, that is gonna hit the structure. So those areas that the wind is hitting it, it's gonna bend. If you wanna exaggerate the illusion, you're gonna bend inward. But then on the other side, you're going to get a suction out of it on the other side as well. So those kind of things contribute to some water intrusion always. Nothing is 100% waterproof, water sealed, but you're always going to get some water into your building at one point. besides having wind force, which is the typical one more than anything for Florida, you also get other natural forces. Water shedding down the wall or pile up at the window and door sills. This can happen at cracks in the surface of the veneer, operable doors and window sashes, poorly designed flashing, other unsealed openings. Nick, if you want to join a little bit on this one.
We lost Nick just for a second. I think he's
okay.
on his way back though.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Not a problem. Oh, sorry, Nick.
No problem.
We were talking about natural forces here, water shedding down the wall, the cracks in the surface of the veneer and all that. If you want to join in a little bit, or you want me to continue?
Yeah, so what we see with, beyond windows leaking and things like that are cracks and typical really aging of the building. You're going to get cracks in your stucco, whether you're wood frame, masonry, whatever it may be, because the building's going to be moving. That's whether it's from wind loading or just natural kind of settlement. It doesn't mean, there's a big issue with it. Doesn't mean there's necessarily spalling yet. But when we leave those cracks unattended, so we're not actively sealing them, keeping that water out, is when you get the deterioration. It's a lot worse in a wood frame building, in my opinion, because you can't see it as well as, spalling and things like that. But one of the most important things about water penetration is really the most obvious of cracks, open penetrations, things that have not really been maintained or just have naturally aged. And you want to go ahead and get them repaired. And usually you want to do that during your painting cycle. That's ideal. But these will happen in the middle of a painting cycle. It can happen after a storm, whatever it may be. Open penetrations, open cracks, holes, stuff like that need to be addressed ASAP because they're just going to lead to more deterioration, more expensive projects, and everyone's favorite thing, water intrusion into units, where now owners have their specialty floors that are damaged or whatever it may be based on a repair that may have cost $700 to do. So, we're going to make sure that's done properly. But also window and door sashes, that comes up a lot. So window sash is your kind of movable part. What ends up happening with a lot of times during storms, it sounds pretty trivial. People do not lock their doors. They don't lock their windows, especially impact systems, because we have to be you have to have a certain resistance against the water intrusion, that the seals and other things are very tight on them, which means if you're not locked, that sash will be open a little bit. So we've actually had new buildings that have new windows and doors that pass water testing, all that fun stuff, and they get water intrusion during storms because people didn't do something as simple as locking the doors or windows. And then flashing is one of the things I see done wrong a lot. And sometimes it's even backwards, where essentially they're redirecting the water that should be directed out into the building. They haven't been maintained, they're deteriorated. Similar to like a weep hole that someone would seal up, that's actually going to exponentially increase that water intrusion because everything leaks. The only window that doesn't leak is a submarine window, and you definitely don't want those in your building. But we're redirecting the water. It's why we have weep holes. It's why we have sills and things that we'll install in some of these window systems. Is they're going to leak. It's not the end of the world. We just want that water directed out. And I always remind people too, they are hurricane impact windows. They're not, fully water resistant beyond the weeps. Everything else is even a really well installed one in a hurricane. You're probably going to get a little bit of water in them. That's not the end of the world. It's greatly reduced, but keep that in mind as well, that there's not a bulletproof window system that doesn't let anything in out there.
And like you said, we don't want that for a building at the end of the day anyway.
No, it would cause a lot of issues.
Correct. Let's not forget also about the roof. The flashing on the roof is also critical. That's a big major area of water intrusion when it's not performed properly, when it's not maintained properly. That's another big source of water intrusion to your building. For the Florida design criteria, windows or door are expected to leak during hurricanes. I think we've covered that quite a bit. They're not expected to blow out. That's what we're looking for. We're not expected to come out of their hinges. We're not expected to come out of how it's attached to the building if it was done properly, but they are expected to leak. Windows and doors must be designed to withstand hurricane wind pressure of 40 psf and greater, pound per square feet. And obviously that depends on more than anything your area where your building lies. Withstand small missile impact or withstand large missile impact 30 feet or below. Small missiles are 30 feet or higher. Small missile or large missile are 30 feet and lower. With the window property, as Nick was explaining, all windows can be expected to leak except for comparisons on jetliners, or some boats are the ones that you're not looking for leaks, but that's not what we're looking on our buildings. Like Nick said, it creates another gamma of different issues to the building that is not recommended. Where the windows typically will leak, it will be on the corner, around the caulking and sealant, and when multiple units are joined with mullions. So those are areas that are typically going to be more detectable when they're leaking. And those are the areas that typically you will see your maintenance guy go out there with a caulking gun and start cutting everything around it, every little hole. As you probably know, there's a lot of situations going on when you seal everything too tight, including when they seal the drainage or the weep holes that they're supposed to have. We have worked on plenty of buildings that we discovered that they cover all the weep holes. Water was staying in the frame. Water will find a way out. Water will always find a way out to get out of that system, and typically becomes inside the units. Window leak type, we got two types of leaks. We got the visible leaks and the stealth leaks. The visible leaks are the operable windows and doors are expected to leak at the meeting interface and the low wind pressure differential. What is low pressure differential? You get the force from the inside, you get the suction on the inside and the pressure from the outside. Those are my situations that will cause those areas to leak. Use tile or marble seals and flooring, mop up the puddles after the storm, and you should not have issues. Don't let it sit there forever or dry by itself, especially on wood frame building. Stealth leaks are a little bit more complicated. All windows and doors leak at the corners and mullions into the wall assembly. The leaks are visible and enter the wall cavity. On wood and metal framing, then they're destroyed. Finishes on CMU are damaged. So you will see that, and I don't believe we have a picture on it, but you will see that on your building. If you have a wood frame building that most areas up north in Florida has wood frame buildings, those are the areas you have to be concerned about. On our masonry buildings, exterior walls, we got our CMU wall, we got our stucco, and the paint that will protect against those kind of water intrusions. On wood buildings, it's a little bit different. We're going to show a picture of it, typical wall section on it. On a mass storage system like a CME, you get the concrete block and stucco, the split face of concrete block, and historical solid bricks is what you typically see. You will have your typical, if you see the picture on the screen, you will have your painting. Your stucco will be after that. Those are areas to protect the building. They're not a structural thing. They're there to protect the building from the weather. My CMU or masonry block is the one that becomes on a structural situation. Then you get your wood fairing, you get your vapor barrier on the interior part, and you get your latex and gypsum board and your paint on the other side. So stucco over CMU, block fillers, and paint is a code accepted exterior wall finish. It's a wall finish. There is no building code requirement for the thickness of the cementitious finish over CMU. Stucco must be installed in 2 coats with a minimum thickness of a ½ inch. Therefore, developers do not use stucco, they use architectural cementitious finish because they typically don't reach that ½ inch. And in some cases, they're trying to square out a wall and they try to put 2 inches of it instead of a ½ inch that is typical. On moisture control, the underlying structural elements are not damaged by moisture. Moisture that penetrates the exterior surface of the wall is temporarily stored in the wall. Moisture is removed by drying action of the sun and wind on the outside. Moisture is removed by air conditioning inside. On some of these cases, and I want to hear what Sal have to say about situations when our piping creates situations, and I'm looking more at my right picture here, create situations on interior walls, especially on wood frame walls, when my piping mechanical equipment start failing, my AC start leaking inside. Sal, if you want to join in and add a little bit on your part.
Well, naturally, we depend on you all to give us a tight condition, Hector. We put the pipe in, and we depend on your division and Nick's division to come up with a secure means of maintaining the tightness and the preventing any water intrusion. I think one of the biggest things that we get involved with as far as the designs in Florida, especially, is every particular application is either user driven or site driven, and the only concerns that we run into are, number one, making sure that we have good stability and tie downs for hurricane conditions. That we work with Mike on to ensure that the structural abilities, can take those loads, because we have some pretty substantial equipment on the roofs and other locations. So structurally, we work together to make sure that we, tie it down so we don't have any issues. The other thing is, you guys make it so tight, the buildings are so tight, that we always used to depend on infiltration to get some ventilation within these buildings. So the need to keep them tight to meet the energy codes and minimize any, air intrusions and water intrusions, you really button up the building so that we have to institute certain designs that will at least allow ventilation within the buildings. So, quite frankly, we're the tail, and you guys are wagging the dog that, opens up what our responsibilities are. So I hate to bow out of this in that respect, but these are your problems. We give you the pipe, you give us the protection.
Thank you, Sal. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Part of the things that we're seeing now, also more and more that we're getting involved into, are lining our pipes on our wet stacks, especially on taller buildings. We're seeing that more and more. Most of our buildings in Florida, or some of the buildings in Florida, are already reaching 30, 40 years. Some that are close to the coastline, especially when you get a lot of people coming in and rinsing off all the salt and everything from the ocean, you start getting damages to the cast iron pipes that how they were installed originally. So now you're getting a lot of issues of water intrusion coming in because of piping failing, because they're cracked, because they lost section enough. If you clean them 2-3 times already, mechanically clean, you're causing problems to that pipe because now it's too thin and it starts to break apart, which causes water intrusion into a unit. And sometimes people will say, well, it's not even close to a window. Yeah, but where is your stack? Where is your drain stack close to that leak? Sometimes even come from the fire suppression system that is leaking, and you don't know until you see the black mark on your ceiling or on your wall. So those are all areas that we have to control as well on moisture, and that can damage our wood frame structure and our concrete structure as well. So keep that in mind. Don't only think about our hurricane season and our rainy season. Also consider about, where are my pipes? Are we close to the ocean? If people are throwing stuff through a Drano and all that destroy my piping, and we can get other issues coming in of water intrusion. Common culprits of water intrusion, and based on our presentation, we got the stucco and windows that are frequently installed improperly. This is noted during visual inspection, confirmed by exploration and resident experience. As a result, we get the wood structural elements to get wet, which will cause them to rot, and then we get a structural issue. Those are events that are costly for an association, very costly for an owner to address. It is highly always recommended to maintain your property and do progressive maintenance on your building. Requirement for moisture control, specifically in mass storage walls. Typically, your designing or your architectural design loads are large overhang at the roof, slope horizontal surfaces, appropriate flatching, functioning drainage plane. That is critical, especially on a mass storage walls. You want to have your drainage plane working. So as you can see from the picture, water will eventually penetrate to the building. You want it to come out of that wall and outside. So exterior coating should be breathable coating, water repellent treatment, and functioning air conditioning. Those are critical to avoid getting that moisture inside, keeping it so to avoid getting wood destroying fungi or damage to the wood siding or wood rot, or even you're gonna get molding inside if you don't have your AC on a particular temperature. Practice for mass wall assemblies. You typically, the current practice on the mass assembly, you got on the left where it had the stucco going into the ground all the way down, which avoids a little bit of water coming in or out. And then you got the best practice, which you should have a whip screed at the bottom. If you see it on the right side, you get your stucco system that goes down to a whip screed. That whip screed will allow water to come out of the structure instead of throwing it to the ground like on the left side. We want the water to come out. Keep that in mind. We want the water to come out. We don't want it to keep it inside the structure. Layers of mass of wall assembly, as you can see, and if you haven't seen your building from the inside, we've got the whip screed on the outside with the stucco. We got our masonry wall and we got our concrete slab. Typically, you will have a seat where my CMU or masonry will be sitting. On our windows, we will have a sill kind of system that will, where the window will sit on and will protect a little bit of the structure. Peggy, if you want, I don't know if we have questions, we can put a pause here right now and go through some of the questions with the team.
Okay. Yeah, she had one related to wood, I think. First question is to Mike. It says, do you do engineering reports for truss repairs?
We do. We typically, though, first ask who the truss supplier is. Usually the truss supplier who originally supplied the trusses, if it's a newer building, we want them to weigh in. It's their trusses. It was their original design. Sometimes you come across a building where you do not have existing drawings or even the truss manufacturer's out of business. So in that respect, yes. But 9 times out of 10, we try to make sure you go back to the original truss designer, but we can certainly provide analysis and reports on any trusses that are damaged and see what the cause and origin was.
Okay. We had another question come in. Hector, it says, can you touch on the EIFS?
The EIFS system, okay. Nick, you want to take that one? I don't know.
The EIFS system, there's synthetic stucco systems that, as we touched on, a lot of the developers use. You see them in a lot of the band systems. You see one of the first things you want to find out is if you actually have an EIFS system, because a lot of people think they do, and it's essentially a foam coated stucco, or I mean a foam that is coated in stucco, which the repairs are different. The biggest thing is EIFS is an assembly. So the same way we have 3 coats of our stucco, our brown, scratch, and finish coat, you're going to have multiple kind of components of that EIFS. So when you're doing repairs on those, you need to make sure you have somebody who's experienced in it and you have specific drawings and specifications, because those systems, you can make them look nice, and you're actually not putting the whole system back, which can cause not only issues with water intrusion, if they're incorrectly installed, they can create what's called a vapor barrier, where essentially we're trapping moisture air within the building. So the building wants to breathe for mechanical systems, but additionally for drying, especially in a mass storage unit system. So you want to make sure that it's reviewed properly. It actually is an EIFS system. And when we're repairing them, we're doing it properly with experienced third-party consultants and contractors because it is not stucco. It's a completely different system. It needs to be patched, repaired properly. And the foam systems that we see a ton, especially around '06 to '08 kind of, or '05 to '07 kind of boom. A lot of that is actually just stucco coated foam, which is a different detail altogether as well. So I think we run into the thing the most is anytime someone sees something that's not stucco that looks like it, it's eaves, when that's just not the case.
Thank you, Nick.
So I directed the gentleman to reach out to you directly, Mike, about the trusses because the building's 42 years old and they're not sure who was the manufacturer. So maybe you can take a look at it, or someone could take a look at it in an inspection and make a decision of at least what type or how badly damaged they are, and then go from there. So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, reach out with any background information. If you have existing drawings, that'd be great. So, yep.
okay. We have another question came in. It says, being close to a body of water on the intercoastal, the ocean, block away, what is the recommendation timeline for waterproofing and painting the structure?
So always it's going to depend on the product that you have and the maintenance you do on your building. If you're cleaning your building constantly, every product will last a little bit better and longer. But typically in Florida, you get waterproofing that is going to be 5 to 10 years. Maybe you're gonna do waterproofing on the horizontal surfaces. On your vertical ones, usually it's 5. Now you're gonna get some warranties that go a little bit further than that. But typically, due to the sun and exposure that we have in Florida, 5 to 7 years is the typical average. Nick, if you want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, so Hector kind of nailed it. It's 5 to 10 years on our typical urethane coatings, which is going to be something you see most commonly on walkways, decks, things like that, balconies. And the thing about them is beyond just abuse. I think we see more damage, not really from storms and things like that, but from people dropping things, cutting it, putting carpet over it. I thought we got rid of all of that 15 years ago, but it's still around. Things that trap moisture, but also people working on their decks. They end up cutting it a lot of the time because they're cutting something for an interior work they're doing, and there you go. You have a void in this membrane. So generally, it's going to be about a 5 to 10 year cycle. You can really get to 10 if you maintain it, and you're really maintaining that top coat because the top coat is protecting your urethane from the UV. And that's going to be what makes it deteriorate the fastest. You also have to understand it is not a bathtub. Urethane, when it sits in ponding water for longer periods of time, is going to break down. So we want to make sure we're sloping properly, getting the water off. As David Karins always reminds us, use gravity, it's our friend. So let's make sure we have direct the water in a way. But you really should plan on about 5 to 10 year cycles. But I think the most important thing Hector said was the maintenance. There is no such thing as a non-maintenance warranty. Every system we put on our buildings requires some kind of maintenance. The maintenance not only make sure it's being cleaned, we're not, having something that's going to accelerate deterioration. It also looks for issues. So if we start seeing, hey, the top coat's deteriorating quickly, let's go ahead and put a new top coat on. That is a lot less expensive and intrusive than doing a whole new system. And then paint coatings, it's really 7 to 10 years. Now, you're going to hear a lot of paint companies talk about their 12-year warranties. 12-year warranties are cool for your paint, and maybe they hold up 12 years, but your sealants aren't going to. And you're not going to throw up a stage and do all the sealants on your building and then 2 years later paint everything. That just doesn't make sense financially or in terms of disruption for your owners. So with sealants, paint, you're really going to be on a 10-year cycle, even with the best stuff. And when you have a new building, if you've just, purchased a new condo and it's on the developer paint cycle, that's closer to 3 to 5 years. And there's not a turnover issue with that. It's, guess what? Developers don't use high quality paint. That's kind of the reality of it. And then you have waterproofing on like your plaza decks, things like that. That's going to be more of like a 20-year system. Those can be hot applied. obviously a lot more expensive, but they are what you're going to want to use when you're not just a typical balcony, walkway, things of that nature. So really maintenance is the key, but there's nothing out there urethane based that really lasts more than 10 years in reality.
I'd also like to make a recommendation that whatever reports you get, whether it be for these items or any reports that you get for maintenance, to store the information in your cloud on your private website for your community. This way, if a board changes or somebody moves or, there's any way that, the next person has to go behind. I'm just thinking about you, Mike. You're going to have to go behind someone. There's probably been some truss inspections on this other project, but, who knows what was found or what they saw, or maybe someone identified the manufacturer on that. So your websites are huge. Again, our standing software company here, Vinteum, they have a free program now to get your website, but put these documents in the cloud, and that way, you have them as backup always for everything. And this includes your contracts. Highly recommend you put any kind of contracts in there, because the contracts usually state manufacturer information. So that's just a recommendation.
Definitely.
Thank you,
Have a
Peggy.
good, it's all right to call the manufacturer reps, your contractors, even if you're concerned about something. It may not be damage, you're not sure, but it's better to report for making sure you're protected by your warranty, but additionally, it's going to mitigate any damage that's caused by something as simple as a pinhole in the system. So.
The other thing too, just one more comment, is that if you have a good, strong record of maintenance, you have a better chance of getting more dollars out of your insurance because they're going to say, oh, they did maintain it well, and they did follow the guidelines of the manufacturer or the engineering company that helped them, and so on. So maintaining your records is huge, and take pictures. Hector?
Yes, perfect. Any other questions? Are we clear on that? Okay, good. So let's continue. So practices for mass window assembly, we're showing two typical installations. We got the typical installation practice that you will see. You get the interior sill, which is a wood frame kind of system. On this system, if you look at it, water might be hitting the window from the left to the right. It comes out, and yeah, it kind of go out the way. But if it goes into the system, goes into my sill, look at that. It's flat here, so it's gonna stay there. It's gonna damage my interior sill. It's gonna damage then my reflective foil, gypsum board, and everything else. The best practice that we highly recommend is having a system or a entire precast unit sill that looks like this, like the where that Nick was saying, gravity is our friend. So let's try to get the water always away from my structure, especially from the inside. So we have a slope here of the window that is going to come to the front of the window, and then it continues outside the window. So that's what we're trying to always achieve, and it will help as well to avoid getting water into my unit. On a CMU kind of scenario, this is what you will be looking for more than anything else. Yes, on a wood frame, you got your typical Tyvek system, sealing it around it with the drying and my tapes. On a CMU kind of wall, you will have a lot of water, liquid applied waterproofing that should be covering the entire opening, not just the bottom part, the entire opening. Once you put then a bucking system on it, as you can see here, right? You have your typical waterproofing, liquid applied waterproofing. Then I'm gonna put my bucking to fix the window. That bucking should be installed with sealant at the bottom. Then you're gonna cover it with additional liquid waterproofing on it. You are protecting your investment. You're protecting the wood frame that is gonna be sitting underneath my window. So if something would have happened, you're trying to protect it as best as possible. Then you're gonna see that the waterproofing, we're still gonna put it all around it on the opening. Then you're gonna put your stucco and your primer and everything else around it. Florida building frame, exterior walls. And I think we talk a little bit about this, the veneer system over frames. You got brick veneer, you got stone veneer, you got metal bath and stucco, wood siding, vinyl siding, cementitious lap siding as well. That's what you typically will see. On a Is the stucco veneer bad? Well, the stucco and aluminum windows can work well in Florida. However, they must be installed properly, which is a big question mark sometimes, and all wood structural element must be dry. This is a nice, beautiful picture of an example of a structural damage due to water intrusion on those areas. Once your wood start deteriorating, you're gonna get mold, you're gonna get less resistance of that wood frame member, which will eventually cause water intrusion to your unit as well. On a situation like this one, that owner already knew that he had a problem and probably water was already getting into his unit. So how are we gonna be repairing all this? Possible repair options that you are gonna have. You got repair of all 4 elevation of a building. You're gonna fix the obvious problems on a patchwork basis, or you're gonna fix the entire portion of the building, repair corners to corners. Repair areas will be good for the life of the building. All this area will continue to degrade, and repair costs will become increasingly more expensive. So on your association, on your building, and this is what we typically see, and Nick and Mike and even Sal can join in, what you will see is, hey, we want to fix only the area that are damaged. Well, okay, but the area that is damaged is beneath this window, for example, on that picture that we have on the screen. But if one window is already failing, there are other windows that are going to be failing. It's not only one in a million. It usually you got other windows that are failing. On your exhaust for the either for your bathroom exhaust or for your dryer exhaust, sometimes you do get water through those because the flap is not working on a hurricane and all that. Then fix it. Let's fix them now. If you got termite, which this had nothing to do with termite, we're talking about water intrusion. The termite doesn't go just to one unit because that's the bad guy of our building. It goes everywhere. So if you already got those damages, you have to follow up on your building. If you fix one area, fine, you fix that area, but the next section will be damaged as well. And a couple of years down the road, it's going to be bigger and worse. So it's going to be more expensive. The same thing applies to concrete. Today you see a crack. Well, I'm not going to fix the crack. Well, now you got stucco falling off. Well, now you got a spall. Now you got the rebar. And it's going to continue to grow. It doesn't stop. There's no such a thing as the rebar and corroding stopping. We control it as best as we can, but it will continue. So you should do a comprehensive repair and not a patch. Damage survey method that we can use to determine your condition of your building. We can do destructive testing, like something like that picture right there. That could be a typical destructive testing that you will see and find out what is the problem. You can have then infrared thermal imaging that require minimum destructive testing. Mike and I were discussing this presentation yesterday, and he started talking about, as soon as he saw the picture, he started giving, oh, I can see the areas that we have problem with water here and here and here and here. So on a picture like this, someone like Mike, someone like Nick, that are extremely experienced on them, they can quickly determine, hey, yes, we do have a problem. These are the areas that are seen. Keep in mind, infrared is good to an extent. It doesn't necessarily will show everything, and it is highly affected by typical condition. If it's at midday, it's not going to show the same thing as closer to dusk or early in the morning. It's going to show different values. So be careful when are you doing your evaluation on thermal imaging.
And turn the lights off too while you're doing that. There's a few lights on in that picture, so that adds some heat.
Peggy, do we have any questions or continue on? So continue on. So this is another view. Okay, thank you. This is another picture just to show you thermal mapping that you can have on your building. You see where it's marked, that big square that is marked with a little bit darker area. That's what is showing right there. And you can tell on the picture, why would that occur? So when you do an evaluation like this, especially on our end, we go in, we take a picture. Okay, we can see what appears to be different temperatures on my wall. Okay, but why would that occur on that particular area when everything around it, as you can tell, is very, very yellow, right? So we look at it, the thermal, we see the damage or the possible damage, and we start analyzing the why. Well, you got a gutter system here. Is that gutter system leaking? Probably it is. Is it attached to the building on that corner? Probably it is. So one is attached, it's leaking into my building, it's stopping here. This is supposed to be an area where water comes out, probably is sealed. Probably you got a crack here as well. So water continues to come inside my panels, which is exactly what we're looking here. So from an experience point of view, if you hire an engineer or a building evaluator that's going to look at your building, they should have enough knowledge and not only look at the thermal image, they have to see the outcome of why that is happening on that particular area. On this one in particular, this is a balcony. As you can tell on this section here, you can see the yellowish where you have it. If you look at this line right on the right side of it, you say, huh, that's interesting, that's a line. Well, if you look at the picture outside, that is my downspout. It should be in a different color. So that tells you right there that, okay, I'm on the right track. But why is my header here underneath my balcony so bad? Why is this so ugly? You cannot tell that well on the picture, at least on my screen, but there's a big crack going this way, and you can see cracks spiraling out all over that area. That means that water has got into it, and we do have a structural problem that has to be fixed now. What will that require? We're going to remove the guardrails on top. We're going to remove the screen enclosure at the bottom. We're going to take out the stucco in that section and replace that header. Always is good, like Peggy was saying. If you have your drawing, save it to the cloud. It's always easier to get that than try to get the engineer to redesign something. And now it's going to be more expensive on the engineer part because he had to redesign something that he never did originally. And we have to cover ourselves. We're not going to be liable for stuff, so we're going to beef it up, right? So it has to be a little bit over design on our end. Mike, you can chime in if you want to. It's going to be a little bit more over design, a little bit more, because we want to make sure that we're covering, because we never did the original design. Right, Mike?
Yeah, yeah. If you have the existing drawings, and it'd be a quick check for the engineer to make sure that's still valid. I mean, some codes have changed depending on the base of the age, but for the most part, if you have existing drawings and the existing information about that header beam that goes across there, 9 times out of 10, we'll probably put it back with the same. But if we don't have anything, then yeah, we have to do our own little homework and do a couple more calculations to figure out how we would design that today, and then provide that beam header size.
Sal or Nick, you want to chime in on something?
Just quickly on the thermal imaging stuff. Thermal imaging relies pretty much solely on the person doing it. To do it properly, so the way it works is water has a higher mass than air. So at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're about the same temperature on, like, say, a roof, for example. If you scan right then, everything's going to look the same, or you're going to see some variations and assume they're water and they're not. So one of the unfortunate things about doing thermal scanning is they really have to be done at night. You need to have some time for that area to cool down. So the water is cooling slower than the air. So you're going to see that difference. A lot of times with roofs, especially, you're going to want to do what's called a nuclear test, which is essentially looking for variations in density. That's going to be a lot more accurate for water. But if you do the thermal, it does give us good information. We can't really do nuclear testing on wood. It's not going to really tell us much. Just make sure it's being done properly. If somebody shows up at 5 o'clock in the evening to do a thermal scan, it's not really going to help you that much. So you want to consider that. And just because someone has a lot of really nice thermal pictures, it does not necessarily mean that it's good information. So you want to understand when it was done, how they did it. If we haven't had rain recently and you haven't wet down the roof, there's no moisture really to be introduced there. So you're not really going to get a lot of good readings. So, that's something with a thermal is it works well when done right. It has its limitations, but you want to make sure it's being done with by somebody who has experience, or you're going to get a bunch of knowledge that's not really all that helpful.
I have a question, Hector, about self-cleaning paint products. Do they actually protect the paint, or is that
No.
just salesman hoo-ha?
So the thing about these, Lotus On was kind of the first one. They were very good at marketing. It was a snow product that it mimicked the lotus flower, which has self-cleaning ability, whatever it may be. There's a couple issues with the system. It worked great if you never touch the wall. So what ends up happening is similar to the lotus flower, it essentially has these kind of fibers in there that as it rains, it kind of self-rinses. If you rub up against those enough, it'll damage them to the point they don't really self-clean. Another big issue with them, they only really come in flat. So most buildings want to have sheen on their building. It looks a lot nicer, more like it's painted. They just don't really have that ability. And then also the ones that they sell that have mildewicide, all these different things within the paint, the mildew's not sticking to the paint anyway. It's sticking to the dirt that's on the paint. So mildewicide works great for about 3 or 4 months, and then it's essentially just typical paint. So really the best way to take care of your paint is to be on a good pressure washing schedule, and make sure it's maintained properly. But these self-cleaning ones, they do have applications, but in a condo world, people are just going to be disappointed, and they are quite a bit more expensive. So they exist. I've just never really been a fan, but man, their marketing was very, very good. So a lot of buildings got it done.
Sounds good, right? We have another question regarding the Broward County recommendations for if you're within 5 miles of a body of water, a Sears milestone inspection be done. In the meantime, the painting only lasts 5 to 10 years. So I don't know what makes sense. If at 5 years, just do the inspection again. What's your recommendation?
So keep in mind that the milestone inspection is a mandate. It's law now in Florida, and that is for the structure. Yes, you will be looking at the painting because the painting protects the structure, but we're looking really for the structure elements. That's why I believe, and Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if the law changed, because there were a lot of changes going on. It was 10 years, if I remember correctly, to do the milestone.
Yeah, and the SIRS is the same. And obviously, we don't recommend a SIRS waiting 10 years. Codes change, materials change, prices change. So just because it's the minimum doesn't mean to necessarily do it. But yeah, milestone, it's 10 years. And you're exactly right, Hector. The point of the milestone was immediate safety issues with buildings. Let's get those fixed. The SIRS is not just, let's make sure the structure is maintained, everything else, but other things that affect the structure. So our waterproofing, our paint, all of that. But you wouldn't go out on a milestone inspection where the structure is good and they have terrible paint and fail them. That's just not reality. But there's SIRS, you'd have, hey, you need to paint next year, so you need to start getting that money together. So you kind of separate those two of what their intents were. But I think 10 years is way too long. I mean, we used to be 3 years on capital reserves. So why do 10 for a structural? You don't need to do them every year, but I'd say 3 to 5 years is a much better approach. And there's nothing wrong with it. The only thing you have to do as an association is when you get that updated SIRS, you have to upload it. It's not something where, oh, I've uploaded my other one, I don't have to touch it for 10 years. When you make those changes, the FDBPR needs to know about it. So.
Another thing to mention also, which just reminds me with these new boards coming in, I get a lot of complaints of why do we have to take this legal update every year? We took the 4 years, we took the EF1 and 2 courses, HOAs and so on. Why do we have to continue to take? Because every year a law could change. And this is what Nick's talking about. He's talking about improvements or things that we learn by each year, which goes on. So if you're on the board, please welcome these legal updates. It's just an hour out of the scope of 365 days of a year that you have to sit there and listen to 1 hour of information that could protect your families, your buildings, your residents. I mean, the whole thing. So very important to have those legal update classes taken.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Nick. Okay. Moisture survey results. This is what you typically would expect to see at one point. Where are you finding your moisture issues on your building? Then we go to a repair protocol. Find the point of entry of the water. That's what we were talking about, like the picture before. We got the gutter throwing water at the building. Then we got a division between the first floor and second floor that probably is cracking. Find where my water is really coming into my building. Provide protection for the wood structure. Paper bag metal mat directly over wood does not protect the building. There has to be a different product that is my moisture protection against my wood. That is the one that creates my, what's the word that we used before? I'm sorry. Let's go here. My drainage plane. That's what we're really looking for. We want to keep my drainage plane intact. We want to keep it moving forward. Provide well-executed flashing on all penetrations, windows, door, dryer vents, wall-to-roof intersection. Please keep in mind that products that you might use on your house are not the same product that it is recommended for a building. Those are different scenarios with different requirements. So please be careful on, hey, on my house, I use this. In Boston, I use this product. Well, in Florida, it's different. Have to be very careful what you're using. And again, go to your specialist, go to your engineer, and they have different products that work better for our practical condition. Provide mean of exit of water in the drainage plane, like we talked before. You got to have your whip creek ready and clean so the water can come out. You got your whip holes on the windows that have to come out. Make sure that they are clean. Make sure that you protect them. Don't have your maintenance guy go and caulk everything, every little hole that you see. That's not the purpose of it. They are supposed to come out. Between first floor and second floor, typically you will have another section with whipscrete that you want water to come out. You don't want it to run from one floor to the other when you're having wood and CMU coming together. Condo projects, repair of stucco over wood frame. The new wood framing at the beams and walkways, new concrete deck at the walkways, and the waterproofing on the deck at the walkways. So those are things to consider and to keep repairs and maintenance on them. You got the typical drawings that you will start seeing. Got your backer rod between one section and the other, or my expansion joints. You got your flashing system on your deck. Keep in mind that the waterproofing is not typical requirement for a waterproofing system. It has to go off the wall. Typically we go 4 to 6 inches maybe, but it has to be on the wall. Then you put on your stucco system. So it's behind the stucco system because the stucco is porous and will let water go through. So you wanted to hold that, especially on the corner sections. And I'm gonna keep using this because I found it incredible. The reference, use gravity as your friend. If water is ponding, make sure that you raise that section so water can come out. Use gravity as your friend. You got the beam bottoms that are required to leave water to come out, and you got your flashing details of the beams. On some expansion joints, you want the bottom part of the expansion joint typically open. You don't want to hold the water inside there. People sometimes don't like seeing that. You can put a cover on it that lets water out, but please keep it open. There have been a lot of buildings that we have gone through that seal top and bottom. Now you trap the water. Now what? Now you're affecting the whole system. Let water come out. If you want to use something like a metal pan or something just to hide the hole because you don't want to see the hole, that's fine. But make sure that you don't seal it. Let the water come out. Condo projects before. This is a deteriorated wood beam and wall frame. This is what on the infrared camera pictures that you saw is something like this. What typically would have been if you open it up. You were gonna see my beam at the end that is already damaged with water and it's already deteriorated to the point that probably needs replacement. You have to fix it, replace it, and you gotta waterproof the whole system all over again. In this case, it went from one corner to the other one when we had a typical joint on the building and what it looks like on that picture. But They did the whole wall. We fixed everything that needs to be fixed, and that is a more permanent repair than just a Band-Aid on address the beam and forget about everything else. Well, other areas are affected. Not only that, if you do minimum repairs, you're gonna have patches. People don't like patches. So going from wall to wall is a lot easier. Doing my paperback glass, doing my Tyvek or my waterproofing system on a wood frame wall is a lot better, and lap it properly. You try to avoid having a joint right at the corners. Try to go past the corners or before the corners so you don't get those issues. Those areas are critical for everybody. As you can see, after the repair, we waterproof and repair the beam. The deck and wall framing were installed back. And now you don't have a patch. It looks brand new, it looks beautiful, and it's going to serve you another 10, 15, 20 years if you don't get any damage on it or waterproofing damage on them. Like Nick was saying, it's not necessarily the products, it's what people do to them that causes some of the damages. Ground floor mass storage wall. Under normal condition for a well-maintained wall, the amount of rainwater penetrating through the stucco into a concrete block wall is minor, easily absorbed, redistribute, and then release at the bottom interior and exterior environments. That's what we were talking before. Withstanding tropical storm, which every building in Florida is designed to, the high winds and heavy rains load up at both the CMU and the stucco veneer sections of the wall. No electricity is available to run the air conditioning. Improper execution of the veneer to mass storage system interface result in severe moisture overload. So when you get your hurricane or your storm and you are without power, that's when our building becomes a little bit more vulnerable, because you cannot dry it out or anything else faster than you could with the AC, especially on all the areas. Control joints were the flashing. My control joint are used to subdivide veneer panels and at the interface between veneer and other materials, windows, doors, and my CMU. My flashing is to direct the water from the drainage plane to the exterior surface of the wall assembly. So you have to consider those are two different things that we're using there. My control joint, if I got my wood frame on my second story and CMU at the bottom, you're gonna have your control joint. You're gonna have, which typically serve as a weep screed, as well as you can see here, the double V expansion joint. If you have your roof, a roof to a wall, it's gonna be my flashing. You're gonna have flashing on your windows. Those areas are designed to direct the water away from my structure. That's the whole purpose behind them. So please keep them intact. If they're starting to fail, if you're starting to see leaks, that means that life expectancy have exceeded and you should be looking to solve them as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more expensive it will be. Practice a second floor, first floor interface. This is what we were talking about. You got your CMU wall at the bottom, your typical masonry system. You got wood frame. When they meet, you will gonna have your control joint, which also serve as a weep hole or a weep screed. Water will hit my second story, will go through the system, will come out down, and we don't want it to come inside my CMU. We want it to kick out and get away from the building. So it will come in this area. All my waterproofing is going to be above this joint, and water will kick out and get away from my interior of the wall. That's what we're always looking for. Careful with your maintenance people. They typically say, hey, I got a leak, and they come in and seal all this area out. And you will find a big blob of sealant across my building. Then you seal the whole water inside of your system. You got a different area that was having issues, and the place where the water was coming out, you just blocked it. So those things you have to be very careful about it. On the right side, you got almost the same kind of scenario. You got your stucco, your bond breaker, your drainage plane, your lath, your bridge flashing, and flashing control joint. The same scenario, you want water to come out of the building, of my structure. You don't want it to continue going down. At my end of the building, like we saw before on typical practices versus best practices, you got your stucco system is coming down Again, you're looking for water to come out. You don't want to keep it inside. So leave alone the weep street. Don't seal them. Let them be free so water can come out of them. And that will keep your building safer and with longevity. If you
Okay.
seal them up, yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Keep an eye on your mulch too. A lot of times this is designed assuming sometimes, unfortunately, the architect will design it without any landscaping being there. But even when they do it properly, a lot of times mulch isn't removed, plants grow, their root spaces go up a little bit, and they will actually elevate that. But as Hector shows on this drawing, if you're above where we've actually done our subgrade waterproofing, stucco is not a waterproofer, it's a weatherproofer. So if it has moisture against it for a long period of times, that moisture is going to end up in your unit. So sometimes it's as simple as they built up the grade too much and it's caused all this deterioration. And the kind of flip side of that too is always keep your gutters clean because that flashing is meant for downhill water. So if you're now clogged and it's going back up, you can get leaks in your walls from a gutter system. So, there's little things like that will save a lot of money and headache down the road. But Hector nailed it on the head. I don't know how many times we find that things that are drained, supposed to be open like weep screeds, are sealed shut. So now you just have a nice bit of water that's always built up there, and everything at that bottom is deteriorated, which I'm sure Mike loves it when it's completely deteriorated where it's connecting to the slab. So, that's something to consider as well, that a lot of these things are just kind of, for lack of a better term, dumb things that happen that cause a lot of damage that would have been really easily avoided. So we're not talking about avoiding a hurricane here. It's not putting too much mulch in. So.
Thank you, Nick. Peggy, do we have any questions or we should continue?
Okay, looks like someone made a comment here. Ever since the collapse of the mandatory guidelines, contractors are out searching for work. Sadly, most board members are not engineers, so the quality of the work can be compromised, especially if the job is subcontracted. References matter, and at least 3 bids are also hopefully a permitted job will be helpful, and this can be somewhat difficult. I get questions all the time about this. Do you have any comments on that?
I will go with best practice recommendation. Not only getting the 3 bids, we had a lot of an influx of contractors coming from out of state after the collapse looking for work. So how many buildings have you worked on in Florida? Let me see your recommendations. Let me see which engineer did you work on your building? I have worked with some contractors. I have never worked with an engineer before. So the first time we start asking questions, because remember, we are hired to protect the association. We are hired to be your eyes and ears, because that's what we do every single day. You might be a teacher. You might be an accountant, that you have a condo unit. You don't do this every day. You don't look at it every day. We do. That's our job. So it's good to have someone on your side that will protect you and advise you. At the end of the day, I can tell you, hey, you should be cleaning your building. You should be maintaining your building. It's your call to do it or not. We will give you the advice. We will give you all the information for you to make an informed decision. But it's critical to have someone on your side and ask for those references. What engineer have you worked before?
Yeah,
It's
it's definitely
ridiculous
very,
to see
very good.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to see contractors that never work with an engineer. And the first time we said, no, you're doing it wrong. Well, I've been doing this for 20 years. So, well, then you're doing it wrong for 20 years, We look for pay apps and payment certifications. Well, you didn't replace 300 cubic foot of concrete. You only did 3. Why are you charging 300? Why are you saying that you replaced 20 windows when you barely touched 1? So those kind of things, you have to have someone on your side to do that. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and definitely, and the liability end of it is really important too. Hector mentioned the accountants, all that, but even if you have engineers on your board, they should not be doing your inspections and things like that. There's a liability in that where you didn't hire a professional to do it. Yes, even if they're licensed in this state, who are you going to go after if something happens? the point of having those third parties is to make sure there's additional eyes that are looking out for your best interests, but also helping through the pay apps, all of that. But another important thing, I don't know how many times I've done extra witness work or we've done something where, hey, we had this done by a contractor. It was permitted. It was inspected by the city and it was wrong. That it happens all the time. You can't really go back after the building department. We're working on a plumbing project right now where the city inspector approved 4 units that didn't have fire tape around the PVC, which is a huge fire violation. And the owners were a little upset that our inspector said, no, you have to open the wall. I have to see it. And he uncovered this. And their argument was, well, the building inspector signed off. So just relying on building inspections doesn't, now they're great inspectors out there. Everyone has a bad day, but having that third party, a lot of times you'll find, even if it's not a finite monetary value of you saved me $20,000, it's the savings in things like documentation, protecting you if you ever have to file a claim, making sure you're following the contract in that you can lose protection if you don't do things properly and in the way the contract lays out. So, it's just that extra person kind of helping you through. It doesn't replace your attorney. Your attorney still needs to review the contract. It doesn't replace your insurance agent. They still need to make sure the proper, what we have on our manual is something that they recommend. But beyond that, it just helps you through the whole process. Another thing, as much as I wish this wasn't, you didn't have to use this as part of the case sometimes, if the contractor burns a bridge with us, it really affects them. And so, we've had contractors that were in our good graces, did a lot of work with us. Everything was great. They didn't do a good job for a few of our clients, and now they don't work with us anymore. So that is a consequence where, sometimes the association may look at it as, well, whatever, they painted our building. We're not going to see them again for 10 years anyway, at best, whatever. They can really affect their reputation by just screwing up one project and burning that bridge with people that are kind of in the industry. Another big thing on your bids, make sure you list subcontractors. So have that on their bid form that they need to list who their subcontractors are. One, you find out how much work they're actually subbing, but additionally, you may see a subcontractor on there that you've had a problem with at your building. And it may be a plumber, an electrician who maybe have a very small part of the project, but you want to know that information. And then you'll additionally know, hey, I need to make sure I get COIs from these people, because sometimes it's not even malintent from a contractor. They just forget to call the tile guy to get his COI. Everyone thinks everything's great, and then we have a problem on site. So, understand who's going to be involved in the project, who would be on site, and that'll help protect you. Nothing's going to be perfect. No project we could say, hey, this is going to go completely smoothly. There's going to be no issues. That's not the point of these project manuals and this third-party kind of support. It's to make sure when something happens, there is a path forward. There is some kind of guide in the contract legally to know what goes next, how you do certain things. And without somebody who does it day-to-day, it makes it very difficult for the board.
I'd also like to interject that the inspectors are not all engineers.
Most
In fact,
of them aren't.
most
Nope.
of them are not. So unfortunately, they get to sign off on things that, they're not really technically qualified for. And I don't want to bash them, but, until this happened, maybe the cities ought to consider only hiring engineering people or degreed engineers for inspectors. It just amazes me that they can sign off. It's scary, actually. We do have another question, though. This is interesting to ask you as an engineering firm, but how do you check the engineer's qualifications, aside from their license? So, how would you check that?
So besides the license, I will always recommend have an interview with the guy. Bring some questions in for them. And you can tell if he's going to be difficult to talk to. Oh, I do this all the time. You don't have to be asking me that. Or he's going to come in and say, hey, I reviewed your questions. This is an example of how to do that. Because it's easier to talk to a person than that is willing to give information out than someone that is a hard head and doesn't want to, I've been doing this for 40 years. So who are you to question me as an engineer, Those are critical situations for us. Something else that you could be doing, Mike, Nick, go ahead and if you have any ideas on what else to check on.
You can check their license to see if there's anything, you can actually go online. You don't
Against their
have to
license.
be part of the, Florida Professional PE or engineering. It's there. But additionally, we touched on interviews. References are important because people think, oh, they're only going to give me the people that are going to say the best things about me. That's not necessarily true because they might have a reference that for what they did for them, they were great. But when you actually talk to them, ask them questions, they may say, you know what, I could never get a hold of them. Yes, I got a great structure in the end. The permit got signed off. Here we are. But I could never get a hold of them. They didn't have good documentation of anything. So it's not even that they're not, being a responsible engineer. It's that they're not doing the additional things that you may, want from them. You also want to make sure you have a clear scope of work because sometimes you'll think you have a bad engineer who's not doing things when in reality it's not part of what they've been hired for. So make sure you understand it. Make sure you ask the right questions. Because a lot of times we can add phases, you can do additional services, but if there's not a real understanding of expectations, deliverables, things like that, it's bound to go wrong. And there may be a lot of anger that's really based off a misunderstanding, not somebody doing something wrong or anything like that. But I really do recommend when you call a reference, don't just, ask the questions that are important to you. What do you as a client think is the most important part of your engineer? And I'm not talking about qualifications, things like that. That you can all check, but all right, are they responsive? What are the things they were good and bad about? Because also there may be somebody that hated them, that they hated them for something that doesn't even bother you or would affect you. So, it's really important to really get those questions, follow up with those references, talk to contractors as well. Most of the good contractors do not like bad engineers because they get them in trouble too. So they want the engineer on site saying, fix this. This needs to be done this way. This needs to be done that way. One, they love having a report that says we told them to do something because they can say, look, you told me to do this. But additionally, they're not having warranty claims and things that cost them money in the end. So the good ones want those people to oversee it, make sure things are being done properly. And they also love to say, I don't know, ask the engineer, which is great. We're here for those questions. But without that additional help, you can really get steered in the wrong direction and have a lot of issues. And a lot of these things, you close them up, they look fine. It's 5, 6, 7 years later that you really start seeing the damage. And at that point, a lot of warranties are gone. Statute of repose has been reduced to 7 from 10 years. A lot of things have changed where you really want that third party looking out for you. And there's going to be times they tell you, guess what? That wasn't in the contract. It doesn't mean they're going to constantly, advocate for you in a negative way. It's going to be, this is the contract. We all agreed to this scope. We're making sure that the scope is not only done, but we're doing these, on-site inspections, verifying it. But the biggest thing is if you don't have a good contractor, it doesn't matter if you have a good third party because we're not there all day, every day. Even if we were, we're not going to be able to see everything. So, there's always onus back on we're guiding them or reviewing things, but not every square foot of that thing is going to be checked in any kind of agreement. So, have a good contractor you can trust as well.
I also just one last thing want to just remind everybody that your property manager is not an engineer, nor are they a project manager. So, if you're putting that heavy weight on your property manager and they're getting again, bogged down with things, who's managing the property, the rest of the property? So there's other things to involve. So leave your engineers to do their jobs and manage the projects as the project managers. And yes, your property manager needs to be aware of what they're doing, but they cannot be held responsible for what's going on from the engineering standpoint.
Thank you, everybody, for the comments. I believe Nick was right on one major thing that people oversee is make sure that you understand what is the deliverables. What am I expecting to receive or to do? Because I can understand clearly, hey, I'm going to do a project manual and give it to you. Do you know what a project manual is? What covers? What is included? What is not? And make sure that you can sit down with your engineer and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be touching the roof. Let's touch this. But my project manual was only about the roof. Well, whose fault is that? So let's be clear on what is the deliverable at the end of the day? That is critical for everything. We're never going to agree on everything. That's fine. But we should be able to move a project forward. We should be able to get into an agreement and move on. And one last thing that happens way more than I wish it will happen, you get your SIRS, you get your reserve study. Perfect, you got money to do the construction. Did you include your third party that's going to be there? Usually you do not. For some reason, you always say, oh, I got $2 million to do the job. Okay, the contractor comes in at 1.9. Perfect. Now we have an engineer. That's going to cost us $100,000. Oh, I didn't count for that. I didn't have the money for that. Always add that section of your engineer. You need that third party. And yes, we are expensive. We are an expense to the association. So add that up on your numbers because usually they're not there. Moving along, we're almost done, guys. Let's see if my computer decides to work. Okay, let's see. I jumped something. Okay, advantages to the design. It redirects water from the drainage plane at the frame wall above to the exterior surface of the CMU wall below, and it prevents overloading the mass storage system. Like we were saying before when we were looking at this, and Nick was giving the example that all of this gets sealed up, water builds up here. We want the water to come out. We don't want it to be in there. We want the water to come out. That's what we're talking about, the advantages to this design of getting the water outside my building. So a quick recap, all windows in stucco can be expected to leak, are expected to leak. Drainage water intrusion is essential to protect wood framing. Window and stucco at many buildings have no accommodation for drainage. When window and stucco leaks, a drainage path to the exterior must be available. Don't seal it up. If not, water will soak into the wall cavities and damage the underlying framing cover in stucco. This is not adding up the piping. We're seeing that more and more and more. Your drainage, your wet stacks that you have on your buildings are starting to deteriorate, especially the older buildings. That causes problem. Your vents for your dryer also sometimes cause problems. On your roof, your flashing cause problem. Make sure that you get all that water out of your building. If the piping is the issue or my AC is the issue, make sure to fix it, to address it. Keep in mind that the Florida Building Code requires you to have an evaluation of those pipes and evaluate who's doing the lining is what I'm getting at. When you do the lining, that has to be revised, typically by the city. Restoration plan of action and end result. Remove window, install your flashing. Reinstall the window on all buildings. Remove and replace the stucco with drainage plane system, including water will exit the building after it has entered when you do those restoration plans, and expected damage increase in the future to structural land will be avoided. Keep in mind that if you are reinstalling a window, the window should be code compliant. Most towns that we work with or cities, they will not allow a non-compliant window to be installed again unless you got a shutter system already in place. And if you don't have that, the engineer or the contractor will not be liable, so they will install a code compliant window, which means it could be impact rated or not, depending on your location, but they must be code compliant. Any questions? Any additional questions, guys? This is a beautiful building, by the way. This is a nice design. We got the mechanical engineer as well here, guys. If you want to ask him questions, which is not typical to see them on presentations like this, go ahead.
Art, do you have any comments?
We're not that good, guys. Come on.
One thing to keep in mind while we're waiting for questions, we talk about drainage planes, all these type of things in the wood frame. So say you have an exterior project where you're putting in hardy board. Everyone likes the hardy. We like it. It's going to hold up. It's a cementitious product. The issue we see with that is people do not understand that if they have what's say T111, which is a structural sheathing, they take that off, they put on hardy. You have to make sure you put sheathing back. Things like hardy are not structural in that aspect. Now, if you have gable ends, if you put in what's called lead-in bracing, which is like cross bracing, a lot of times that'll work. But we've unfortunately been brought into projects after the fact, and have to inform the clients, well, unfortunately, we're basically gonna have to take everything off and reinstall it because right now the building is lacking in shear reinforcement, so we could have an issue in a storm. So, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's siding for siding. I don't have an issue with it." You got to make sure you understand what's going back and what the limitations are, and that's another reason a third party can help you out by saying, "Look, this needs to be done," or maybe don't use this product because you have to do the extra work. So, always want to consider the whole system.
Okay, well, they're just saying what great information it is. We got a lot of very nice comments from the audience. Thank you so much. And this was recorded. I will send it out. Are you willing to share your slides, Hector? I forgot to ask you if you want to have the slides requested directly from you, or should I send them out?
If Hector's
Hector?
not, we can
Okay.
definitely, we don't have a problem with you sending them out.
Okay,
we're
all
definitely-
righty. So I'll send that out to everybody with the sponsor sheet, the recording, and the slides. So with that, I just want to mention a few things before we close. We don't have any more questions, but we have some upcoming webinars. Let me go to next week first on July 22nd. If you're in the Tampa area, I have an in-person event, something I only do once or twice a year. If you would like to join us as a CAM or a board member at the Ruth Chris Steakhouse, we're doing a special presentation on hurricane post and pre-catastrophe. It's kind of a challenge. We're asking everyone to get prepared. Are you prepared? And I know in Tampa, especially in this part of the state, a lot of people were hit the last couple of years, and you might have questions. I've got an insurance representative. I've got the senator coming for the area of Tampa, Senator Brian Nathan. We've also got the emergency management team director coming from the Tampa area. So bring your questions and come and have a free lunch on the very generous sponsors who are paying for it. July 23rd, Palm Beach County is having a trade show. It's going to be themed as the Olympics, so hopefully you can come and join us for some classes and again, free lunch. On July 30th, I have Jim McGuire coming from Liberty Air and Electric. He's known mainly for Filter By, his filters for all of these buildings, high-rise buildings, but he does have a class, of course, to present. And it's new for me, so I'm looking forward to the information. Vinteum Software is coming in on August the 4th. They're giving a presentation, and I'm sure it's going to tie into more hurricane preparedness and also information on why you need a website. And I really recommend one to be autonomous from your property management company in addition to your property management company. August 5th, I'm excited to have K7 coming in and giving a reserve study class. Excited about that. We've got Nick Brenneman coming in. And then in August, I'm excited to also announce I've got construction defect attorneys coming in from Ball Janet giving presentations. Daniel Baum, who was on earlier today, he's going to be giving his new class on insurance. So a lot of things happening in August. And I want to say thank you so much. Don't forget to look for your legal updates for your CAM license coming up for renewal September 30th. And we'll see you shortly on the next webinar. Thanks, everybody from
Thank you,
Karins.
everybody.